It's interesting because, it sort of feels like a lot of the narrative is full steam ahead for Japanese equities because the BoJ overhang is over. But perhaps we have a shorter runway to more change than we might think.
Right. Thanks for having me. Actually, the biggest change in terms of the messaging and policy stance of the BoJ is they start to be alert to the upside risks to inflation, and that's why they explain that the tweak to YCC is a kind of preemptive measure in order to avoid massive purchases if there is a positive development in inflation and inflation expectation, and that's understandable. And the thing is that inflation in Japan is getting harder to predict, not only for the BoJ but also for us economists as well. The Tokyo CPI which came out on the exact day of the BoJ's decision, overshoot. And BoJ is good if the CPI is high because of the cost push factor, but probably they're started to worry about some different factors are playing in. And therefore, I would say, depending on the inflation development, the early pivot is getting probable.
Exactly, Taro, especially when you see these unscheduled bond buying. What sort of signals does that send about the BoJ's intent?
Actually, they try to send a message that they want to keep stimulus. The unscheduled operations we have seen last week is a message that they don't allow the long-term yields to go straight up towards 1.0% ceiling. And therefore, I think their message is they are alert to more upside risks, but their baseline is still dovish. They're pessimistic about next year's inflation achieving 2%. And their message is they still think that they need to keep stimulus by purchasing bond and restraining long-term yield.
Taro, where do we see the yen going from here then?
Actually, given that the BoJ is restraining the long-term yield, and the yield is not moving upside down, or the volatility is slightly getting lower compared to the last week. I think it's going to be totally depending on the U.S. yield, and I personally think that the dollar yen rate will hover around this rate, around 140 or something like that.